Have you guys heard about bioglutide? This is one of the most talked about compounds in the pipeline right now.
Let's talk about bioglutide. So bioglutide, or also known as Na931.
Bioglutide has the potential to blow retatrutide out of the water.
Bioglutide matches Ozempic and maybe even Mounjaro? No weekly jabs? Say what?
My name is Lloyd Tran. I'm the CEO of Biomed Industries Inc.
Na931, branded as bioglutide, does not exist, and the company behind this non-existent drug, Biomed Industries, has engaged in extensive scientific fraud, trial plagiarism, and data fabrication for multiple years across multiple drugs. You'll find a blog post with all of the primary evidence presented in this video attached in the description. I believe that the CEO of Biomed Industries, Lloyd L was primarily motivated to perpetrate this scam as a way to defraud investors for his own financial gain. If you have been sold securities in Biomed Industries, I encourage you to reach out to a lawyer immediately and to contact the SEC.
No longer have any hope of a cure. And we're here at Biomed Corporation talking with Lloyd Tran to find out more. Mr. Tran, 65% against...
To better understand Biomed Industries' fraudulent activities, let's take a quick look at GLP-1 receptor agonists to contextualize its hyped drug Na931, also known as bioglutide. Over the last year, I've become increasingly interested in GLP-1 receptor agonists, RAs for short. You might already be familiar with semaglutide, sold commercially as Ozempic, Wegovy, and Rybelsus, or tirzepatide, sold commercially as Mounjaro and Zepbound. Both of these drugs are GLP-1 RAs. They help diabetics regulate their blood sugar levels, but they're also fantastic weight loss drugs, and extreme competition exists between dozens of pharmaceutical companies looking for effective GLP-1 RAs with minimal side effect profiles. If you can find a next-generation GLP-1 RA, you have a license to print money. Some analysts expect the market to reach $150 billion by 2030. Demand is already massive. Eli Lilly's revenue for Q2 2025 was $15.5 billion, with tirzepatide products making up over $8.5 billion of that figure, more than half of its revenue. I'm particularly interested in pipeline drugs in the GLP-1 RA space, and when retatrutide comes to market in a few years, demand will be immense. Retatrutide is easily the best GLP-1 RA we've ever seen, and in my opinion, drug of the decade. Retatrutide's impressiveness cannot be understated, and it's important to know just how good this drug is to contextualize the claims made by Mr. Tran about bioglutide. In February of 2024, a small medical company called Biomed Industries announced that they had developed a promising anti-obesity small molecule drug. In this post on their website, Mr. Tran is quoted as having said that the drug has shown only minor adverse events in a phase 2A trial. A press release from PR.com dated to February 2024 confirms that this quote was not added after the fact. 16 months later, in a submission to the academic journal Diabetes, Mr. Tran submitted preliminary top-line results of Na931 allegedly gathered from a phase 2 13-week randomized trial. The 13-week MAD study showed Na931 demonstrated dose-dependent reductions in mean body weight from baseline up to 14.8% at 150 mg daily dosage, or 13.2% relative to placebo. No muscle loss was observed. No clinically meaningful differences were reported for GI-related adverse events among subjects treated with Na931 compared with placebo. There are 3 things claimed about bioglutide in this submission that are incredible if true. Number 1, mean body weight loss of 14.8% after 13 weeks. Number 2, no muscle loss, suggesting almost all weight lost would have been adipose tissue. Number 3, no clinically meaningful GI-related adverse events compared with placebo. Putting the first point into perspective, Mr. Tran claims that the clinical data gathered on Na931 shows that it's more effective at raw weight loss than retatrutide. Here's a look at retatrutide's data from the biggest study conducted thus far. In the max dose cohort, mean weight loss at 12 weeks was around 12.5%, a fantastic number, but bioglutide is allegedly better. Additionally, addressing claim 2, all GLP-1 RAs tend to have somewhere around 25% lean mass loss, so we could reasonably assume that around 9.5% of retatrutide's 12.5% figure is non-lean mass, mostly adipose tissue, with the remaining 3% being lean mass, mostly muscle. Extrapolating from these numbers, if the highest dose of retatrutide results in 9.5% non-lean mass loss, and the highest dose of bioglutide results in 14.8% non-lean mass loss, bioglutide would appear to be 56% better than retatrutide with regard to a key endpoint. Finally, although the side effect profile of retatrutide is relatively minimal, the max dose cohort had 15% of respondents reporting diarrhea and 19% reporting vomiting, well above the figures reported for bioglutide by Mr. Tran in a press conference we'll look at later. If these claims are to be believed, bioglutide is a drug unlike anything else we've seen before. Remember that retatrutide is already candidate for Drug of the Century, and Biomed Industries claims that their drug is better in every single respect. I don't believe that bioglutide exists, but incredible data isn't anywhere near sufficient by itself to believe fraud beyond a reasonable doubt. The rest of this video is going to point to multiple lines of evidence that cast doubt on the existence of the drug, the data associated with the drug, and will cover Mr. Tran's history of fraud and lies. If we look at the original announcement from February 2024, Mr. Tran said, "The drug has shown only minor adverse events in a phase 2A trial. If you're a US-based pharmaceutical company engaging in the research of new drugs in humans, you're required to lodge information about your clinical trials with the federal government at clinicaltrials.gov. A search for NA931 returns 3 results: one trial that hasn't begun recruitment yet, a 28-day phase 1 safety and tolerability study, and a 13-week phase 2 trial in patients with obesity or overweight. As a quick primer, phase 1 studies mainly test tolerability and safety. You do them before a phase 2 study after you've confirmed that the drugs are both tolerable and safe. Conducting phase 2 research before phase 1 research is a big no-no. This matters because Mr. Tran's statement on phase 2 minor adverse event rates were from February 2024, but bioglutide's one and only stage 1 study began in May of 2024. How could Mr. Tran have known the adverse rates from a phase 2 trial on bioglutide 3 months prior to bioglutide's phase 1 trial even beginning? Additionally, bioglutide's 13-week phase 2 trial allegedly began in July of 2024, with its primary completion date lodged as February 2025, a full year after Mr. Tran's phase 2 claims. There's a lack of congruency in Biomed Industries' research timelines. I believe that neither of these trials took place, and the studies, as well as the claimed outcomes in press releases, journals, and other forms of media, are fictitious. The submissions to clinicaltrials.gov are filled with other pieces of evidence that cast doubt on the credibility of Biomed Industries and the existence of bioglutide. Throughout many press releases and news articles, Biomed Industries has repeatedly referred to bioglutide as a small molecule drug. They did so in their initial news post from February 2024. They did so in a press release from October of 2024, and again in a press release from September of 2025. Almost all GLP-1 RAs are peptides, with orforglipron being a notable exception. Within the context of medicine, peptides are categorically distinct from small molecules. Most orally active drugs classified as small molecule have a mass less than 500 Daltons, whereas GLP-1 RA peptides tend to be far larger. For example, semaglutide's molecular weight is 4,100 Daltons, and tirzepatide's molecular weight is 4,800 Daltons, an order of magnitude larger than most small molecule drugs. This isn't a fuzzy boundary or a spectrum, they're mutually exclusive descriptions. The first issue here is bioglutide's branding. Why did Biomed Industries opt to register a trademark with the tide suffix, which comes from the word peptide, if their drug is a small molecule? At best, it's an intentionally misleading branding effort that piggybacks off of established weight loss drug names. But the bigger problem is that Biomed Industries itself isn't quite sure what they want bioglutide to be. Very quick side note, alongside the small molecule and peptide differentiation I'm about to explore, bioglutide has been inconsistently referred to as either a triple or quadruple agonist. Let's head back to the phase 2 study of bioglutide submitted at clinicaltrials.gov. In this submission, Biomed Industries repeatedly refers to its drug as a peptide in the arms and interventions section. NA931 is a peptide quadruple receptor agonist of IGF-1, etc. NA931 is a peptide quadruple GLP-1, etc. After more research, I found a very simple explanation for this discrepancy: trial plagiarism. Notice how in this section there's a doubling of the first words and phrases on multiple occasions: placebo comparator, drug, and experimental are all duplicated. This is because almost all of Bioglutide's phase 2 study has been copied and pasted from an unrelated clinical trial. The trial in question was ran by Viking Therapeutics in August of 2023 for VK2735. VK2735 is a peptide dual agonist of GLP-1 and GIP, similar to tirzepatide. Let's look at some of the sections. Both the initial description and official title are almost verbatim copies. And the eligibility criteria have the exact same pattern of plagiarism, aside from line 6 in exclusions, which was slightly altered. Finally, the arms and interventions section. We have the duplicate initial word or phrase, which indicates direct copy and pasting, and a change from dual agonist peptide to quadruple agonist peptide. Mr. Tran forgot to remove peptide when plagiarizing this section, likely focusing instead on extending the list of receptors agonized. Fun fact, this small oversight is what initially took me down the plagiarism rabbit hole and the discovery of Mr. Tran's scam. Biomed Industries has 9 other trials listed on clinicaltrials.gov. I did my due diligence and checked the others for plagiarism. Mr. Tran's fraudulent trial submissions span multiple drugs and multiple years. From 2020, NA831 for COVID plagiarizes Moderna's mRNA vaccine study. From just a few months ago, NA921 for Rett syndrome plagiarizes Acadia's pharmaceutical study of trifenatide. And from 2024, a phase 3 for bioglutide and tirzepatide in tandem plagiarizes Eli Lilly's bimagrumab and semaglutide in tandem. Mr. Tran even plagiarized the exclusion criteria of hypersensitivity to monoclonal antibodies from the Eli Lilly study, which makes sense for their trial because bimagrumab is a monoclonal antibody, but it doesn't make sense for bioglutide, which isn't a monoclonal antibody. It may be the case that Mr. Tran discovered a triple agonist, quadruple agonist, small molecule, non-peptide peptide, non-monoclonal antibody, monoclonal antibody, but plagiarism seems to be like the more likely explanation. Mr. Tran held a press conference after a presentation at the ADA Scientific Sessions Convention and uploaded the video, unlisted, to his YouTube channel. In it, he talks about the alleged results of the Bioglutide phase 2 trial. Here's what Mr. Tran said about the racial background of the participants. Please note that the background music is Mr. Tran's edition, not mine.
Women, 62% women, men about 38% or so average. In terms of race, about 60+% white Caucasian, some Asian, some Afro-American, some Maori people in New Zealand, some Native American, so represent about 30+%. Weight about 100 kilogram.
Looking back at the phase 2 study submission, only 5 locations were provided, all in Australia. Why did Mr. Tran say Maoris were recruited in New Zealand? Being charitable, this could be a slip of the tongue owing to English not being his first language, and he may have meant Maoris from New Zealand. But Australia's population of ethnic Maoris is sub 1%, and I find it difficult to believe Biomed Industries recruited over a dozen Maoris, as well as a non-zero number of Native Americans and African Americans in Australia for a study of 125 people. There are some additional points I could make about Biomed's New Zealand connection that are incriminating. Out of respect to Mr. Tran's extended family, I've decided not to. Elsewhere in the YouTube interview, Mr. Tran presents the following slides. Not content with only plagiarizing clinical trial submissions for VK2735, he's also plagiarized the data structure and notes of VK's results from a press release on their website. Curiously, Mr. Tran plagiarized the 28-day trial data instead of the 13-week trial data, as indicated by the words multiple ascending dose level instead of dose level, and note 1 beginning with population includes all instead of efficacy population. The data in Mr. Tran's slideshow is quite sloppy, inconsistent structure, a missing percentage sign, and a number that's begging for a decimal point. I'm not skilled enough to analyze the numbers presented by Mr. Tran to incriminate him further strictly on the data presented. I'd bet my life this trial never took place and the numbers are fake. So if anyone's willing to add additional commentary regarding the data, leave a comment and I'll be sure to pin your message. There are 2 other things I'd like to mention about the presented data. Firstly, Mr. Tran has consistently stated that bioglutide results in no muscle loss, but there are 0 points of data presented here that back that claim up. It's not mentioned in any capacity despite being a major part of Bioglutide's pitch. Additionally, the supplement Mr. Tran authored and submitted to the Diabetes Journal claimed reductions in mean body weight from baseline up to 14.8% at 150 mg daily dosage or 13.2% relative to placebo, which differs from the 13.8% change from baseline and 11.9% placebo-adjusted figure in the video. Somewhat unsurprisingly, VK's press release on their dual agonist reports reductions of 14.7% and 13.1% relative to placebo. Mr. Tran simply increased these numbers by 0.1% and claimed that they belong to Bioglutide. Incredibly lazy. Other parts of the submission to Diabetes are also plagiarized. The method section is the same verbatim theft we saw in the clinicaltrials.gov trial, and VK's pipeline page line up almost word for word with the rest of the document. I don't know who decided to archive SEC news digests back in 1991, or who decided to upload those to the SEC's website, but what I do know is that Google indexes those digests, and if we look at issue 91-212 from November of 1991, the following entry appears. The Commission announced on October 29 a final order of permanent injunction by consent against Loi H. Tran, enjoining him from violations of the registration and anti-fraud provisions of the federal securities laws. The complaint filed on July 11, 1991, alleges that in 1989 and 1990, Tran sold almost $2 million worth of unregistered common stock of a company he had founded, while making false and misleading statements and omitting to state material facts. I did my best to find out more about this case, but I have limited resources, and while it might not be enough to convince a jury of Mr. Tran's misdeeds in isolation, it confirms all of my priors about this individual. 35 years ago, the current CEO of Biomed Industries sold shares in his medical company to over 100 investors and did so while making false and misleading claims, as well as omitting to state material facts. In today's money, that $2 million he swindled out of everyday investors amounts to over $4.8 million. According to another SEC digest, his company was declared bankrupt not long after this scheme. And yes, this is the same Mr. Tran, who even lists the company involved in the complaint in his LinkedIn profile. This man has no shame. My skepticism regarding the existence of Bioglutide, as well as the other half a dozen NA-branded drugs Mr. Tran claims to have invented, can be neatly summarized as follows. What are the odds that a man with a history of making false and misleading statements to investors about his medical companies discovers the most powerful anorectic drug known to man that would be worth tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, if it existed? Biomed Industries has never brought an NA-branded drug to market. It has never completed a phase 3 trial, it has repeatedly engaged in clinical trial plagiarism, and it has made several false claims about its drugs and their efficacy. Bioglutide doesn't exist, nor do any of the other NA-branded drugs announced by Biomed Industries. It's a complete scam, and based on Mr. Tran's history, I'm sure it was done not for scientific prestige, but for financial gain. He's done it once before, and he's doing it again. Despite my confidence and certainty of Biomed Industries' wholesale scientific fraud, I could be wrong. If Mr. Tran wishes to defend his company, here are a series of questions that require immediate, direct answers. I won't read them out, but you can find the full list as well as the relevant documentation in the blog post attached to this video. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I want to ensure that those involved in this con are appropriately identified so anyone who might involve themselves with these people in future can know that they are dishonest and deceitful scammers complicit in scientific fraud. Lloyd L. Tran, aka Loi H. Tran. Mr. Tran is chairman and CEO of Biomed Industries Incorporated, previously owned Controlled Release Technologies Incorporated in the late 1980s and defrauded investors out of roughly $4.8 million USD in 2025 dollars. He's likely the mastermind behind the current fraud at Biomed Industries. He's based in San Jose, California, known to target the Vietnamese community with his scams. Zung Vu Tran. Mr. Tran is Vice President of Bioinformatics and AI at Biomed Industries Incorporated. I believe him to be Lloyd's brother, and he's just as complicit in the fraud. In another unlisted video, he talks extensively about the phase 2 trial of Bioglutide and its results. Results he knows were faked. listed as the principal investigator of the Phase 2 Bioglutide study. Michael Willis is Vice President of Business Development at Biomed Industries Incorporated and CEO of Medaware, a subsidiary of Biomed Industries, complicit in the fraud. Talks about interest from investors in the June video. He's listed as testing facility contact across multiple sites in Biomed Industries' NA921 trial that's due to start at the end of October. He knows that these testing sites don't exist and he isn't facilitating any real research. Fern Vu is Vice President of Operations of Biomed Industries Incorporated and Lloyd Tran's wife. Listed in some studies and on some documentation, likely has no real active involvement, but almost certainly aware of her husband's fraud. That's it for this video. If you have any more information about the people involved or the company, please leave a comment. If you've invested in Biomed Industries, seek legal assistance and contact the SEC as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. Stay safe out there.